By the way, if you heard yesterday the speech of the mayor of Como, he told the story of how this place, Como, was a leading industrial pole in silk industry, with a number of very, very small companies all together creating a very, very strong and economic viable ecosystem. So my question is, maybe we have a European model that is a bit different from others. It's just a question, or based on my own experience. Okay, so could I, okay, thank you very much. Actually, again, apologies. I'll try also to, of course, keep the time because I know that a lunch is waiting for us. I'm using the words robot companions, you know, more than humanoids and so on. And I find it useful. Companions have a sort of positive meaning, you know. Robots are here, and we want to help us. And but in general, let's say, also this is another point I make. I'm going back a little bit to historical hints, you know. But I'm one of the few persons who have a memory of what happened in the last decades in robotics. And here there is a synthesis, you know, what happened in robotics in the 70s with the development success of industrial robotics, and then the onset of service robotics, and today a new wave that is really leading to what we can call robot companions, thanks to a number of to new knowledge and new technology, so new science and new engineering. So story is, and here we are essentially in an area that I like very much as described in the movie I, Robot, by the way. If you remember, I, Robot is expected to happen in 2035, that means less than 10 years from now, where the robot, humanoids, but also a broader I would say area, companionship is there. I found these few slides that, in my opinion, tell the story. 2015, Xi Jinping was just was nominated prime minister, no, president, whatever, president, and he, because, you know, China is a technocracy. That's clear. You know, I know China very well, like most of you, is ruled by engineers, essentially. They decided to invest in robotics, and they invited, 2015, they invited a few leading people around the world to contribute to the definition of what could be the grand challenges. By the way, this conference held annually. I just received the invitation for this year. Every year, they invited prominent people to listen to them and to define their, contribute to define their strategy. At that time, there were almost no humanoids in China. And I gave my vision. In fact, where I already said that the industry of robotics could be comparable to the one of the internet. I talked about robotic revolution. At that time, I was a member of the World Economic Forum, and this is what I said at that time to the Chinese government, describing this idea of robot companions forever. That's the idea. See why I'm not talking about humanoids. I'm talking about robots that essentially would be with us from childhood to maturity to old age in very different ways. And again, at that time, there was no AI like we know today. And I said that all new robotics would be needed. Essentially, taking as a model extraordinary performance of living beings, even if this was not exclusive, of course. But essentially, this was my suggestion. And I was saying that a new generation of robot companions will come. My colleague in Brussels may remember what happened with the FAT flagship proposal on robotics in 2012 and then 2014, because we made this proposal for developing a European version of robot companionship, essentially, the idea was simplification and integration. So less components, more robustness, lower computational load, higher energy efficiency, higher adaptivity, higher dependability, ultimately lower cost, 2015. At that time, our proposal was, I know this conference is global, but of course I take the European point of view to share with you a little bit of history. But at that time, our idea was to be leaders, in the world of a very, very ambitious, like the International Space Station on robotics, led by Europe, but with a collaboration of all the world. And in fact, we have got tremendous support from all over the world, I must say, with leadership from Europe. What is companionship? Actually, many people, for example, have forgotten what happened in 2010. You may remember there was a spill in the Deepwater Horizon oil spill that essentially was creating a terrible threat for the planet, because oil was spilling from the bottom of the Gulf of Mexico. Nobody was able to stop it. So robots saved the planet in 2010 by essentially fixing the leakage. This is companionship. One more point, again, my slides are a little bit of, let's say, notes, okay? Is about the brain. Sometimes I'm surprised, but this is a big question, about physical AI. What does it mean? Essentially, evolution, the brain evolved as a controller, not the contrary. So the brain came from the body, not the contrary. And I never forget this. Actually, our brain is a control machine. Our brain is, as Professor Emeritus, famous neuroscientist, described, is a fantastic predictor and active simulator rather than a passive receiver sensing information. So essentially, our brain has evolved as a controller of the body, and still there. It works in this way because of that. So I think it's, again, very important. What are robot companions? Ubiquitous in this sense, because we can have robot companions, in a way, helping us, like prosthesis, or wearable, or even ingestible, something that we can have inside them, helping us to monitor health, and of course, assistive. It's important. Are we able to lead robotics, physical AI, if you will, worldwide? And the answer is yes, because we have essentially, here is, by the way, my friend ETH Zurich are here, of course. But the Scuola Superiore Sant'Anna, my institution, is 7th in the world according to the Shanghai ranking. So essentially, this means we are educating talents. This is my institute, almost 400 people. I really care of them. They are educated to be leaders, to be the ones who will make science, who will make engineering, who will create the companies. And I really would not like those people to emigrate after being carefully educated in our system. And, so essentially, you see, more than 170 at that time, PhDs. Is a tremendous bunch of talents that we are painfully, if you will, educate in Europe, and are the ones that essentially will be able to develop these kind of things. Again, look at Chicago 2035. It's fantastic, actually. Please watch again iRobot, because it's a beautiful movie. Visionary, but essentially extremely pertinent, You see the robot doing services, a companion. And here is also the threat, what happened at that time, you remember, is that this one is a good robot. You see, this one, sort of dull robot, And this one is the one that has been cracked. But if you look at the scenarios that are shown in the movie, you see monopoly. You see the issue of regulation, of course, but you see also the issue of work, and also the issue of emotions, the issue of consciousness, all a big question that, in my opinion, we are very relevant, no longer science fiction, and we have to address. Where are we in respect to that? I have worked, and actually I presented already this years ago, how far were we from science fiction? And we could analyze all issues, dexterity, materials, energy, motors, and so on. And at the end, this kind of prediction that was made by Bill Gates 20 years ago and became something, becomes real if we are able to do that. This is a European essentially, we were the first, thanks, I'm always indebted to European Commission for funding our research. I put that first point. This is the result of one of the many European projects that have been funded that made collaborative robotics a reality. So collaborative robotics is a reality and was invented in Europe. Also non-conventional component. Manipulation was mentioned, but many other things. So essentially, we are able to do that. And also, we open, we were discussing with Mirko, this idea of soft robotics has been created in Europe, And now, it's one of the most successful conferences. It's a way of thinking the body differently. Not metallic, not plastic, but soft robots. And we have been leaders, actually. My colleague Cecilia Lasky, who, by the way, is now in Singapore, because there were no actions in Europe on soft robotics, or not sufficient. So a different kind of body. And today, all of us know what happened. This means that science fiction, just in 10 years, you remember 2015, the World Robotic Conference in Beijing. After some years, from Xi Jinping down to companies, you see what the American, but also the Chinese have done. And I'm not showing this, but all of us know what is happening in China, okay? And it is clear that something happened after that this conference described this vision. And this is the report by Borja Stangli. This has been already said. Actually, my dream 15 years ago was to substitute the car industry in Europe with the robotics industry. This was the aim of the Robocom project, okay? Looking really far and looking at this incredible market. So the question now is, are we able to do that again? Yes, because we have the talents. No, because probably we don't have the ambition, and obviously the market is now much different than 15 years ago. Because, this is the point. By the way, I'm working also with the Japanese. The Japanese are pursuing a very interesting approach, the one of the avatars, okay? Again, derived from science fiction, but with a very interesting approach. That is, the avatar is a robot always controlled or supervised by humans. And I must say, I like this very, very much, because it is good for the robots and it is good for people, because there is always a human. And this is, if you go to Tokyo, you can visit the Avatar Robot Cafe, where the waiters, some waiters are robots, controlled remotely by disabled people. And acceptability is an issue. And this is a paper, I'm a co-author, it's about how the public acceptance of cybernetic avatar, because we have to measure and publish in good journals how people would accept. Actually, almost 30 years ago, 15 years ago, we did this. You know, we deployed real robots, design. There was yesterday a discussion on design. Designing robots according to our culture can be done, and can be done by using some of the best skills we have, because Europe, we are leaders in design, particularly in Italy. And you see, this is the first robot in the world designed by industrial design. This was done almost 25 years ago, and tested in real environment with real citizens in a real European, Italian small town. And this originated also, sorry, this one is not, some issues, like again, energy in robot is an extremely important, but this one is about roboethics. So we have been leaders. So we started with roboethics in 2001, and then we moved to robo law, and the students I trained during robo law are those who contributed to the AI Act. You see, investing in people is extremely important. They became leaders also in this. Going fast, work. The meaning of work, meaningful work, this is something that is very important with the generation Z. Can robots, how would be robots and AI, of course, part of work? Young look at meaningful work as a very important issue. And you know, this is our vision. This is by Barbara Mazzolai from IIT and Cecilia Lasky, published on Science Robotics, the Vision Future Robot. So we know, we have our roadmap, so we can predict the future. We can work in direction that would lead to future robots that would regenerate, change shape, have social intelligence, so on. I'm going to the end by talking about predicting the future. I like this very much, by the way. This is for children, but you know, there are so many aspects of innovation. But in reality, the wolf in the novel of Little Red Riding Hood, very interesting. It's very smart. What is it doing? Essentially, is anticipating. The secret of innovation is not to follow, but to anticipate. And actually, in fact, predicting innovation, not incremental innovation. Everybody can predict incremental innovation, okay? But very few can predict disruptive innovation. So what is disruptive innovation making? For example, you see in Blade Runner, even the science fiction did not predict the smartphone. The guys flew, but had to stop to make a telephone call. So predicting innovation, but it's very important because to look at science, you know, science, so discovery rather than engineering or invention can generate disruptive innovation. So very quick. So what we like to achieve by 2035, essentially, let's move on innovation. This has been said, I think, by Jonathan, actually. So we want to educate inventors, not designers, and entrepreneurs rather than managers. Actually, I did it. This is in Nature. Is about really a revolution in education. I know that education takes a lot of time, but in my opinion, we should really look at the fundamentals. You know, in Italy, our most famous poet is Dante Alighieri, who wrote 700 years ago the Divina Commedia. And in a very well-known chapter, he made Dante meet with Ulysses. And to make the story brief, he made 2 points. So what is life? What is about the future? Is about solid knowledge. So we must know how to build robots, how to make a new AI tools. At the same time, we have to have strong principles. But you know, this is something, my point is, that should become a value and the barrier to entrance, not just a nice thing to pursue. We should impose, like tariffs, let's say, a barrier to respect strong principles that are part of our European history. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad you did have the slides there. Some fantastic films and books there as well. Do we have any questions in the room? Go on, Jonathan.
I have a very trivial question, but I couldn't help wondering, what was the purpose of the robot who's hitting your colleague in the head?
That's an interesting story. Yeah, actually, this is it's an interesting story from academic point of view. This is, at that time, he was a PhD student, Ami Adadin, and Adi Adadin at TUM in Munich. This was his PhD thesis. Okay? Of course, his supervisors were horrified. They didn't want, even, I know well, to let him do that. So he did it secretly. And the idea was to demonstrate that robots are safe. Actually, there is one even worse, with a knife. Yes. So he did a very, very, say, dangerous experiment to demonstrate that robots are not dangerous. And today, thanks to his pioneering work, incidentally, then he became quickly a professor, a full professor, director, so he made a very, very fast and successful academic career. Also thanks to the papers he wrote. So there are a lot of science, technology, and disruptive innovation. So today we can say robots can be companions. Why? Because they are not dangerous as before. Also thanks to that impressive experiment.
Dr. Dario, one more round of applause, please.